So welcome everyone to this fireside chat. The fire, Martin, you may not have realized because you came a little bit late.
Wow.
Previously on the table, we've elevated it just so it's not quite as distracting, but but we still have a fire. So this is indeed still a fireside chat. So I'd like to thank very much my guests, Tevfik and Antti, for joining us today and going to be sharing their experiences in the context of teaching people how to create VR from a developer perspective, not just purely from the design or working inside of some of these platforms like Red Room, where you can create VR inside there, but coming a little bit more from programmers, from a developer perspective, using tools like Unity or Unreal. So I'm Michael Barngrover, and I'll be moderating and kind of leading a little bit this discussion today. I myself have also been teaching VR to a variety of different types of students using Unity at the university level, and then sometimes even with very young children from age 10 and up. So I've had some experience, but my training, my experience doing training, giving trainings, has always been face-to-face. And obviously that was very disrupted during COVID. And at the same time, it carries its own separate challenges that the work that you guys are doing, that we're going to hear about in a bit, is different. It's not always face-to-face. It doesn't require this face-to-face component. So there are these different methods that we, the three of us, and many people around the world are taking to teaching VR development. So I'd like to start with you, Tevfik, if you don't mind, to tell us about yourself. Can I introduce how you got into VR and talk to us a bit about the type of education that you
do? Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you again, guys. I want to talk about a bit myself. I am Tevfik. I'm an aerospace engineer. I am almost 30 years old, seeing 30. And I started on my VR journey, actually augmented reality journey, on 2017, where I worked on a location-based AR application. It was the times that Pokemon Go was really hyped, and there was a AR Core, AR Kit released, and also there was a Mapbox and Unity SDK. So in my first job, I tried to show the pipelines in a location-based app, and then I teach people. Actually, I always want to, found my own business, create my own company, but I didn't have any money or any rich parents, let's say. So I thought that I could really teach people how to make AR games, location-based AR games, and also make money so that I can quit my job and do my own thing for the rest of my life. So I continue creating courses like 2 years, and back in 2019, thanks to Udemy courses that I created on VR development, AR development, I managed to quit my job and focus full-time on education in VR development. That was the time that Oculus Quest released, and it was actually a time for me to finally get a VR headset, because PC VR was really expensive, and still is, by the way. So I started learning Quest quickly, and I created VR Development Fundamentals course back in 2020, right? And just after that, I also published multiplayer VR development course on Udemy. That was the times that were locked down in the whole world. So I realized that was really a huge peak on course sales and also popularity, because all the courses were really planned for months, and it was really they were really quality courses. And thanks to all these things, that I managed to get enrollment to 30,000 people around the world, and also I could now hire people for my own company, which is IRONHEAD Games. So back to present. I founded IRONHEAD Games like 2 years ago, and Now we have 4 people working on courses all the time, full time, and also we published a asset on a unit asset store that is multiplayer VR template that helps people convert their single player VR experiences into multiplayer ones using Photon PAN and Unity. Yeah, now actually not so long ago I founded my second VR company, but I will not reveal so much here. We've been keeping it quiet like for the next few months, but I can say that we get a good investment and a very popular investor. And now in my second company, we have around 10 people working on a VR product. So yeah, that's my story.
Yeah, great. Congratulations on all that. And
thank you.
Antti, now I'd like to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself, similar to as I did, talking about how you came to experience AR and VR for the first time, see an opportunity there, and then talk a little bit about the educational work that you guys are working on at Virtual Dome.
Sure. I mean, I try to keep it short, but nevertheless, I come from completely different industry. I've been like 10 years in human resources, and I was entrepreneur for like 6 years. It was relatively big business, I would say, that we got a job for over 5,000 people during that time, and a lot of things happened, and I got introduced to many aspects of learning and education and so on, but really nothing to do with VR or IT. But then I tried virtual reality first time around 2017/18 around that time, and I was immediately sure, okay, it was revive, and what I tried wasn't, you know how it was back then, the software. But I immediately knew that, okay, hey, if this is implemented properly, this can potentially change the whole world. I'm working in HR, and I know how hard it is to get people trained to do. So that is something that made me think that I want to be part of this kind of transformation. So then I started to search for companies who are working in virtual reality and get a little bit interested around the topic, and then things led into another, and I got introduced to Virtual Dawn, and the guys are still with us who were back then, and they were mainly working on virtual reality video games and VFX, like in movie Iron Sky and stuff like that. But we started to slowly get together, and eventually it happened like that I quit my company altogether, and I put all my energy into VR, and we just started to make content for schools and businesses. But of course, during this time, we started to also hatch this kind of idea that, okay, this is not enough. Something needs to be done. And we wanted to see it this way, that we could empower people to create content, because the thing is that we are not that good when we are just thinking with our own minds. I mean, teachers don't know anything, if I can say this way. We don't know anything, and then many people don't know anything. So we wanted to put it this way, that the end possible on the experience that they are having. Would it be work training? Would it be learning? That we wanted to make it this way, that how could we get the people work on the simulations and games rather than we are doing it for them. So that's how we slowly started to build this kind of system in Unity game engine, where we could, have a certain pack of assets and certain pack of plugins that we could bind together with our own codes, and then we could use that and our knowledge how to make the best simulations and games and share this information to people who join our academy. So practically we are now considering ourselves more like a tool maker, that we are creating tools and templates and similar stuff with Photon that people can use and build from there. And we are relatively new when it comes to this type of business, because we used to be having this different angle. But now we have this idea that we train other people to use our tools, and it's been great. I mean, we are now working with Helsinki XR Center and, University of Applied Sciences in France and so on. We are getting a lot of people work with us, and it's crazy what they can do. So yeah, empowering people to create, get rid of us, a bit anarchistic, but nevertheless, we want to get rid of developers. We want everyone to be creators. So that's how it rolls.
Great, thank you very much for that. A few questions. The main one to start off with is what do you both see as kind of the biggest barrier to people learning?
Well, I can. Should I start or? Okay,
Can
the biggest barrier. You can. Yeah.
No. Can I get the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What do you see, or what do you think is the biggest barrier, the greatest barrier for people learning successfully? How to develop VR?
Okay, you first, please.
I will answer to this question with a very holistic way. I would say that this is again my opinion, that I do believe that in the future everybody needs a little bit skills when it comes to content creation this way, and everybody needs a little bit understanding of coding. That it's just the future. That's how I see it. Especially if it ever happens that the metaverse type of thing comes to exist. It's even more essential that the people know something about this kind of game engine usage. So if people would know this, I think that they would be way more eager to get interested and keen on getting into the creation with Unity, for example. I talk about Unity because that's what we use, okay? So it can be Unreal too, just replace it there. But and then when it comes to actual creation, when you get into the Unity, I've noticed that one difficulty used to be at least that people might get frustrated because it requires so much more. You might get into it a bit, but then the software you create, the application you create, you are not that happy always how it functions, because it's way more harder in the end than what you think. And I think that's what you and me are doing, that we try to make it more accessible, that you can create more stuff with relative ease. So that's why I think that we are at this business. So that's my take.
I agree with you. I think in the metaverse, in the upcoming 4 or 5 years, everybody should be able to create content. And when it comes to XR, the content really becomes important, because this will be the thing that you can actually touch or you can actually feel with AR and VR. So exciting times ahead, and I'm really excited for all of this. But when it comes to XR development, or let's say VR development, we need developers. We need creators rather than the games or experiences. Because as always in IRONHEAD Games, we thought that more VR developers, more awesome VR games and experiences. That is really important, because in order to see beautiful games, awesome experiences, we need we need people with skill. And I think Unity is a great one. And back in 2010 it was coding, but now it is game engines. Knowing how game engines work, being able to create things with game engines will be extremely important. And that's why we should really create a lot of educational content.
As you both mentioned that education, somehow your goal is to widen the witnessing development processes or content creation and so on. I have the impression there is much more than Unity coder. Like, there are not only the coders, there are as well experienced designers, UI designers, and so on and so on. Like, even the people who are somehow consuming, reflecting out of like me from a different background of film, that in the end you can learn certain game developments or AR development stuff, but the essential goal is to have a bigger team with a bigger variety of different skill sets to make the quality higher. Otherwise, it's a lot of simple created worlds and simple created stuff. What is somehow, I witness often this approach of, we don't need to hire someone, you can do everything on your own. But in general, the end, after time, you realize, like, no, better is to have really an assembled good team. And so how you work on that to not only create Unity devs, or how you work in your areas for to give the people the awareness that there is an entire team of sub-skills needed?
Yep. Very good question. Actually, in my company, we first hired a 3D artist, and now that artist actually works as a technical artist, and we see a lot of improvement on our products just because a technical artist joined our team. That's why you are right that XR development is not about just coding, but also requires a huge amount of technical knowledge. Actually, for example, I think it is just an XR rig that our avatars has been put on, but the whole other things being developed by 3D generalists, or let's say technical artists. That's why I think we should also somehow create courses or assets or templates for 3D aspect too. I cannot do that because I'm just a developer. But we need to collaborate with those kind of people too. I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, and for us, it went like this, that since, I'm from HR, I know a lot of training, etc. So it worked as a base like 6 years ago. And then when we have now created tens of simulations to Finnish schools and businesses and everything, we worked with methodological way to see what works in training and education. We cut out the not working parts, and that's what we are maintaining constantly in our platform that we share to our creators. We make sure that it's top of the game, virtual reality training and education methodology. So practically this way we try to maintain this kind of validification. People who we create to be creators, they have ability to just concentrate on using our system rather than being know all about HR, training, education, and everything, because that's our part. That's what we do. Our job in Virtual Dawn is to upkeep this information. And then that's why we have relatively heavy this kind of solution. We are not yet there, or we probably never are there, that we could just make this explode free for all. We want to do that also, but currently we are having this kind of quite isolated groups of people that we make sure that they can serve businesses or education or even create games, and they get familiar with other stuff. Of course, it can be used as a solo or as this kind of rogue type that you just take our stuff and just start to create and to make something, but that's not yet our aim. So this is very, very, very important to us, what you just brought up, and that's why it took like 5 years from us to be ready to even share our solution this much.
Okay. So I never tried Virtual Dawn, but is it also a multiplayer platform or a simulation?
Well, practically, if you put it this way, like you mentioned that you share these templates that you have Photon there. So essentially what we have also is that we don't have any in-game creation, because we don't see that it's really can ever reach the levels that it's needed from education and businesses or games. So we might get there one day, but currently what we have works inside of Unity game engine, and it relies on these third-party solutions like Photon, and there is certain amount of plugins, and then we have made our own codes around it and our Unity systems and ton of templates that fits these needs of education and training or even games, etc. So essentially you don't need to know anything about coding to start to use our stuff to create, I dare to say, relatively decent stuff. So hop in, start to drive.
Yeah, I want to give it a try, sure. I think you're muted, Michael.
Michael,
yeah, I think you are muted.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's scary, I would say.
Yeah. What are you doing?
But in virtual reality, as you can see, the body movements are relatively important,
Yes.
They probably are even more important.
Yes, that's why it should be all full body. We really love VR chat for that, because it should be full body for immersiveness. But yeah, it comes with a lot of difficulties in development, and yeah, we should face our challenges.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I'm often thinking that... We don't hear you, Michael, but I'm often thinking that does it even really make that much sense to have this full realism? Because why not to make something crazy, you know? That is it really...
Well, I mean, like
I think it's
all of the
fine
people...
like
It's fine like...
I mean, everyone seated here is in really awkward positions.
Oh, really? So, because I'm here thinking
Tevfik, like he's moving his controllers over here sometimes, and bending in really strange ways. And I know I'm doing the same thing.
You do the same.
Yeah, that's not immersion. That's what we call body horror.
Yeah, because but this is in uncanny valley very long time. I mean, this VR stuff, you know, it takes shit ton of have such equipment that we can really move us here, you know, while.
Yep. Yeah, true. But I think you did a great job here in Engage already. Engage has a good avatar system, and everything seems to be loading in very well on the Quest 1, so no problems there. I really like that Michael implemented the photo face thing, as I know his face from the Zoom sets. I think it's a very nice way of getting a more personal...
I don't know.
Now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
So I had to reset. Apologies. I was trying to ask a question for a while before, and I wasn't sure why no one was listening to me. Now I understand. But this is another topic, a fascinating topic about like trust in a digitally mediated reality. This trust that what I see and hear is what other people see and hear, and there's inherently an element of uncertainty in this to that. But just because I want to, Martin, you highlighted something that I made a conscious decision to keep my photorealistic face. Nick, you did as well. And
me too.
It used to be one of Engage's most highly appreciated feature, because in a business context, Lance, I think you were in some of the discussions with Richard. Richard Ward, one of the members of our community, was often quite a proponent of it because he felt like it was essential for business use cases, that I recognize and trust that you are who you are, that you look like who you look like.
Yep. Definitely, yes. I agree.
And to an extent, I feel like we actually kind of identified in some of the other platforms that voice is maybe even more important. If I know you and I know that's your voice, your face isn't quite as important. I recognize you by your voice and obviously what you say, your personality. But in this case, I felt like, Nick, your hair is okay. My hair, I think, is really contrasting with the photorealism of my face.
But I like your hair a lot.
I chose to keep it because it looks a little nightmarish to me when I saw the avatar editor. So so I kept it actually to kind of draw attention to how this photorealistic face mapping a few years ago was still something that people thought was essential and was really important, and I think we've kind of moved away from that, at least in the enterprise platforms.
Maybe spatial is actually successful because of it.
I wouldn't call spatial a success, but that's a hot take for this recording. But they're successful for other reasons, maybe. Go, I'm sorry.
I would just like to pitch in about this topic that this is like huge thing that we are working on. That where goes the limit? That is it really essential things to be close to real, or is it not? Because we are like working with different universities, like with EEG and other stuff, to figure out that what goes on in your brain that when you go to our simulations and you see a human type of NPC. Does it matter if it is like a ball of light, or does it matter if it's a dinosaur or whatever? That does it really matter? And what I personally always have kind of hated, to be honest, is that how much we put billions of dollars or euros to back to replicate reality. If we have virtual reality, why do we make another world that we already have? You know, for me, VR always was essentially. Well, it was for me essentially a place where we can improve things, like learn better, even.
Yep.
That's why to bring all the problems from the real life here. Like a case use example is that the Oculus Quest is not that powerful device, like many other mobile devices. You can't have gear-grade graphics. So we made like a cashier simulation that you become a cashier, and then we removed all the realism, and you are in space, and there are like a hellish view of people just coming like from a factory conveyor belt and everything, you know, that we just made it abstract, and it functions better, it's more entertaining, and it delivers even better. I think the same would be with the people, that having a Teams meeting is sometimes more efficient than having Altspace meeting, you know, if you are just standing around. Here, this burning thing over there gives the added value to me, you know, at least we can do this kind of stuff. So this is where I see that the things should go, and that's what we try to do, that the meetings would be interactive, crazy, and everything. But it's, of course, on the complete opposite what Engage is doing, since it's putting a lot of effort on these realistic faces and everything. So this is just my 10 cents of the thing, but...
Well, no, I'm sure a lot depends on what your priorities are, because
like for myself, I actually dislike trying to achieve realism. I would rather have a stylized character.
I don't care if they have legs. I'm not looking at your legs. I'm not a leg guy. I don't care. But yeah, I just realized that I'm just like one person, so it's a sample size of one. So I don't want to generalize to other people too, because a lot of people claim to prefer it, but I often wonder if the people that prioritize realism wouldn't just rather not be in VR, perhaps they would just rather be in reality, and not engage with the. Yeah,
I absolutely I agree. Of course, it's always the question of what you want. What is your goal? Like on one hand, I do volumetric recording, and this is all about the real human into the virtual world. On the other hand, I really highly appreciate really avatar art. I really like when someone really puts thoughts into avatar creation, and then I can witness something. Or it's just not something out of the box, out of a standard repertoire. When I meet someone and this is an I don't know, a Van Gogh freak, and he likes to walk either in Van Gogh whiskey or without ear, or he wants to be one of the wielding winds of his sunflower fields or whatsoever. Like, this is. If there's a conscious decision, my problem is more that I have the impression a lot of avatar choices are not really, the people are not yet there that actually they can express who they are or what they're thinking or what they're liking through the avatar as well. They're getting into a catalog situation, and then it's like, here's a human. Take your face. What is your hair? And either the people say like, oh my God, now I'm lying. I'm red hair, but I'm putting a black hair on. Ha ha ha. No, it's a question. There should be an onboarding or an educational process, but don't consider the creation of the avatar as the recreation of your actual being. If you want, you go for it. If you have a certain, and then there is a philosophical discussion or introduction to the approach, and then maybe people would really like, oh, okay, so let's speak about it. And then of course there needs to be the issue of light-white avataring, Quest compatible, and all the technical and somehow needs, but that there's a mindset for creation, I don't see it often. Like, I have been lately walking every day nearly in a museum. I every day found an object in a museum what was somehow, for me, avatarish. And I was like, oh, actually, this could be an avatar. I have been 2 days ago in a Max Ernst exhibition. I photographed one of Max Ernst's figures, and I was like, oh, if someone is really a fan of Max Ernst and his mindset, it would be interesting that he pops up in the figure of this artist into a world. But it's hard to achieve.
Well, I mean, you have to be in a platform. Going back to kind of what you both were talking about, like you have to want it, you have to prioritize it. Platforms like VR Chat or Neos, they exactly let you do that. But that's because that's what they prioritize. If I can get back a little bit to a question that I wanted to ask, I tried, but no one could hear me. Was actually about, for you guys, when you're creating your curriculum or when you're creating templates more specifically, at what point do you feel like it's too simple, that it's maybe not providing the skills that I think people really would benefit to have? It may not be essential for what I think maybe they're ultimately taking this course to get to, but there's a certain level of difficulty that I want to maintain that I could take away to a template, but I want to keep that difficulty because I feel like it's useful.
You want to go first?
Of course, please. Please.
Oh, me. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was like definitely a question that we ask ourselves every day. So, because gotta admit that we used to go very often on too complex. And this is what I talked earlier a little bit about, this problem of just creating content by the request of company or educational institution. They have demands and requests, and often what satisfies answer. It might be very complex solution because it's more fancier when it's complex. And then when we really start to dig into the topic, when it comes to the feedback of the users, that's okay, how did it go and how did you learn this and that? We quite quickly started to realize that often everything can be achieved with more simpler things. It's a little bit like with music sometimes, or whatever creation, that when you start to over-complexify, you might feel that it works or something, but usually it's harder to make simpler and functional than it's to make complex stuff. So that's how we do it in our company. We have to put it through the lens that we already have, since we have found some good simplified stuff, and then the user feedback. So only way to actually get the real answer is always to put them through the user feedback loop and try to figure out. And even then, if something functions, then we have to think that can we simplify it more? Because simple is very beautiful and simple is very accessible. So less stuff, better result often. So that's how we do it. So we don't know it ourselves, actually. We have to ask it from some other people. So that's the thing.
Yeah. In my case, I actually get the feedback from customers via the Udemy reviews, ratings. So interestingly, oddly, some people find the content very simple, some people complicated, and some people just gave 1 star and refund the course. It's really hard to find a general solution to that, because it all depends on the customer's experience, customer's skill set. So that's why I always try to deliver a template that they can use in real life in their own projects, and then plan the lectures and videos, all the course according to that. And I also think that I also plan that at the end of each lecture, they build something. Even it's the simplest thing, they build something, and they build and it's the thing that they built, they did it their own. I mean, hands-on experience. So but there was lots of simplified things that I get rid of just because it's really complex to put on the lectures. So yeah, I think in the ideal scenario, I think we should in an online course, we should first teach people how to code, very simplest way, and then general design of Unity, and then we go to the actual meat of the course.
This is something that I've had struggles with because when I'm teaching Unity, I've taught Unity by itself, and then I've taught VR using Unity. And in both cases, the people that I'm working with are not programmers. They have had little to no. They might have done some Python, but everyone seems to take Python courses without seeming to learn much about Python. And you know, it is extra complicated to try to teach basic programming. At the same time, they're trying to understand what is Unity, what are these windows, what is this editor. So I've often struggled trying to make it simple enough, the programming, that they can pick that up in a way that then later they can use it at the same time that they're learning Unity, because they still have to learn Unity. And I've had quite mixed results. And I was just curious, again, sometimes when I'm giving them templates, I could say, here's a character controller. You know, here's an input controller. You don't need to write that. But I kind of want them to, right? I'm always requiring that they do also. Now, I'm quite old. Like, I didn't program for 15 years. When I learned programming, it was on my own with a calculator. And then I learned in a course C++ back in 2001 and 2. So engines were like just this dream that we would have. And so part of me is still very old-fashioned, like just type everything out, write everything out. And it's not really what is even so, I think, typical or necessary. But I still feel like I want them to struggle with this because...
Yep, definitely. Yeah. I definitely agree. First, that's why first we should really teach the basics. I mean, the really basics. And then we can point them to a template, to a solution, to an asset that they can use instead. But first, they should really create a VR rig, put I don't know, some let's say VR interaction toolkit. There was a asset called Hexagon VR Play, Hurricane VR, for example. Yeah, if you did not start on VR development, you cannot use an asset. Just learn the basics, and then you understand the assets. That's the whole idea, actually. Because we should always use assets. Because we cannot type every code. I mean, that's not enough time.
But about this, we have very much the same, that we kind of hope and expect that the people who work with us might have this first YouTube courses and perhaps first project where something goes up and down.
Yep.
So yeah, that's very much needed. And this what you mentioned about plugins and assets, etc. Yep. Unity is meant to be used like that. You know, there's nothing wrong to use such things because that's how it's designed. And this is where many schools really get it wrong, because we have a lot of educational clients who teach this kind of Unity or Unreal development, etc., and then they avoid this plug-in stuff and everything. So it's so wrong. So that's why quite many schools kind of like this, that they could have other system where we have already chosen the best plugins and they are tied with codes, because it's easier to explain to them that there is a student 6 months course, he can either create this or this, what is better, that he can have a good experience or not. So that's right.
Yeah, I think education just always wants to lock things out, huh? So education always wants to train you the frameworks, but if you are going into plugins, they feel like, okay, you're gonna be dependent on that company, on that plugin. And so let's not learn on the plugins how to create API connections, but let them only learn the frameworks and then see how far they can get in their individual intrinsic motivation.
I think this is what you're talking. What we're kind of talking about is what is the desired outcome? What is the priority? And I think definitely you were talking about it, but obviously you're getting a lot of user feedback. And the question is, what is it that person was expecting? If I'm the dean of a school, I might have a certain type of output that I'm expecting my students to get. It could be a theoretically defined output, or it could be something quite visual. But the students themselves likely have different expectations. I mean, expectation management, right, is the core to doing any type of XR project. What are we talking about? What are you thinking? What's going to happen? You guys, can you kind of talk about, like, not just in the case of, I mean, obviously, Antti, you're working with universities sometimes and institutions. Tevfik, I'm curious if you've ever been approached, if you ever worked with an institution and had this type of managing expectations of how people are, what they're going to get, and how quickly from the things you make.
Yeah, it really depends on people. But for example, if I gave a lecture and in that lecture they had to code hands-on, they complain. But if I provide the ready-to-use script, and they again complain. So it's really hard to find an ideal course or lecture. But I think that we should. If it is coding, we should really do things hands-on. That's what. And if they don't want to code line by line, they can just get it at the end of the lecture, get the whole source code. This is my way of teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you give them grades over a process.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Then you give them grades over that process. People that have the intention to learn, but they can make it until the end for given the source code. But
yes, I can also provide the full source code at the end of each course. They can just grab the source code and move on. Yeah, I also provide that too, and I think it's really important.
Yeah, because they have to move on, right? You cannot next week. You cannot let them fall behind.
Yep. The best way to provide source code at the end of each lecture with a GitHub link, GitHub repository, and commit by commit, you should give students that at the end of each lecture you will get there, and that's the best way, I think. But it is the harder also.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Well, practically, we always give immediately the source code and everything, the GitHub repository and everything. We are not offering a service where we are teaching this from the ground level, that this is how things work. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that quite often, many different countries have different types of expectations for their curriculum, what they are teaching locally. And this also gives quite much difficulties to understand what they do really expect. As you mentioned, that there are schools and they expect certain things, and it's often tied into their governmental national level of training program. So what we do, we mostly deal with Finland, and Finland has this benefit that quite often we have even game courses. I mean, we have a game, you can become a game creator, you can become an applied science level game creator. And they often have this kind of courses that you can choose, and they are super flexible. So other type of system that if there is this kind of flexible expectations from the course, it can be, for example, that creating content in VR or creating adventure game or whatever, then this is a good spot for us because here we can excel kind of. So we try to search for these very niches and try not to do things that we are not super proficient with, because we are not actually pedagogical people at all. We are not trained to be pedagogists. We just provide this tool set and ready to go stuff. We immediately go to this, that you get the source code and everything. So that's like that we try to answer to this type of need, because it might be too complex, especially for size of our company, to get into the understanding of the global education systems in a way. So we just hope that this kind of thing, niche that we offer, is easy to understand and the needs are met when they kind of see that this might satisfy their need this way. So we don't need to go too deep into the soul of the complexity of the thing. Because one more thing I would like to add, because it's kind of interesting that quite many countries, let's put it this way, the people who are deciding of things, that what people are learning at schools in IT, they might not know much, So the problem is often that the students know what they should know, but then the teachers and the courses that they are provided by the education plan is not satisfying the need of today. They might be satisfying the needs what was 10 years ago. So there is this kind of huge parity existing kind of.
Yeah, the languages are developing quick in coding, so yeah, it's very hard to keep up. For example, one platform like AltSpace is running on Unity 2019, while another platform, VRChat, is maybe running on 2018 or whatever. Then if you want to give them the newest lessons, you're not using those versions anymore. You're giving a newer version. But if you want to apply it and give them a quick gratification, you give them a quick feedback loop, like, oh, now you can put on your headset and see what you've built. It's very useful. So I wonder, how do you look like that? If you can make it relevant enough, is no problem that you use a 2018 version of Unity, or is it really a problem nowadays with the students? What do you think?
Can I get the last question again? I'm sorry.
So for the students itself, for their motivation, is it important that you use the newest language, like the newest Unity version, or is it more important that they have a faster feedback of what they have built, a faster seeing what they've done, like building something in Unity 2018 and then implementing it in VRChat right away?
Yeah, about that, they always want to use the newer versions, actually. I actually get lots of issues with them because I always advise them to use the same version that the lecturer is using so that they can follow easily. But at the end, they always use the latest, even sometimes beta versions or alpha versions. But at the end, they just get some issues. So but I also try to keep the courses up to date with long-term releases, so that they will not have so much problems. Yeah,
the bugs are out, but the students are willing the newest updates because they are trained to update their system to the newest for security reasons. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but when the platforms update, like all the creators, they go into a mass panic. I remember about 6 months ago, AltSpace updated like all of their spaces, and like people treated it like a mass extinction event, like their worlds are crumbling down because they have to.
My world's not working anymore. I need a new course from Michael.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this, again, we have this little benefit here that we they have to do what we tell, otherwise we don't do type of stuff. We always use like earlier versions of Unity, and we want to make sure. I don't remember actually the exact version number, but it's always, often can be even way back. So, because I take a case example. We have now this summer one class of students who are using our tools, and then individual art students who are creating art projects in our system. They told us what they are wishing to do, what they wanted, and then we chose the best of our templates and then made small customization. Of course, sometimes it's needed and we can do it. And then we gave that to them and instructions that, okay, this is the version, download this, because otherwise we can't help you. Because otherwise, if you download the latest version, we know it's going to be, you are on your own. And people who usually needs other services, we are not making anything to AltSpace or Engage or something like this. Because if some people wants to play, for example, multiplayer in our system, we have multiplayer there, they can have this kind of meeting. Of course, not this quality, because they're not concentrating on meeting apps. But the idea is that the people who use our stuff create their own app they can put into App Lab or Pico Store or wherever. And that's kind of it, we are not providing services to creating AltSpace content. So not have a problem. That's great.
Michael, are you muted again, or we couldn't hear you anymore?
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Well, let's see.
Yeah.
No, there you go.
Yeah, I have to reset the audio from time to time. But it does. It asks. The funny thing is, it says, "Is your audio better?" but I would not have any feedback. I wouldn't know how to answer that question. So one thing I was going to talk about was how important is it to update your versions of Unity? I mean, I think you're talking about it like the objective of learning Unity is to make your own things. When you follow a tutorial and stuff breaks when you're using a new version of Unity, the hope is that you've learned enough by creating that in the older version of Unity that you could figure out how to make it in the newer version of Unity. Because Unity is not trying to fundamentally change everything about the user experience of creation. So, but that is practically a challenge and I wish I could have gotten this question out when Tevfik was here, because he's not working so directly with his students. He's creating the content and they follow along. And of course, if they have any problems after, he has to hope that, did you really learn what you were meant to learn? Did you really, or did you just do exactly what I said without thinking? Did you take the source code without really reproducing it? Did you develop a mastery of the concepts that I'm introducing? Because if so, then when Unity changes, you can learn.
Yeah, but for these things to scale. Yeah, for these things to scale.
Go ahead then.
Sorry. You have to bring in people whose end goal might not be mastery. Like they might have a limited purpose.
And once they've met that purpose, they don't need more. Like, in fact, investing more energy into it would be a waste for them. Like, for example, like educators and institutions, they might not need anything very complex. They might just need a social space or an exhibition space, and they don't need any complex interactions or so forth that they would need. So, once you get to that basic level, and you maintain that, doing all the added work, well, that's just added work. Yeah, and it doesn't give you anything.
Yeah, Michael, we can't hear you again.
Yeah.
Wow, I love the
but
audio.
I kind of
engaged.
understood what he said,
Yeah.
It's
like he's saying, wrong as always, Lance. You didn't think this through, Lance.
But what I was meaning was we were talking in the context of updating Unity versions. And that's inherent risk, that if they didn't understand the significance of that and they could go get some other versions, if all they wanted was, I want to be told what to do, I'm going to follow instructions,
right?
Then they're kind of in a difficult situation, because they didn't really learn it. I mean, they learned how to follow explicit instructions that became outdated. So then the question is, why go through that? Why go through a Unity focused course? Go into something that's more likely to be stable for them. Like in a rec room type of environment where they just have to keep what they've learned would presumably be retained for much longer inside of rec room or another platform like it. One final question for you, and then to wrap up on.
Sure.
What do you think is the next few years looking at for you in terms of teaching people how to create? Do you see it growing very, very quickly? And if so, who do you see as your kind of target market and target audience?
Yeah, well, I would really, really much like to see that the virtual reality equipment booms and the companies and businesses and schools start to use it way more, and we could get where we want to be. We would like to, for example, create a virtual Don Kenya, virtual Don Chile, and this kind of units in different countries who would serve the local needs using our tools, and they could get a job from that they could work and get, create content for local businesses and educational institutions, and perhaps even we could facilitate video game creation communities. So I wish that we could make this kind of, purpose-oriented global unit of creators, and we could harness it from there. Because we are quite small, we don't have capacity to serve millions of people first. So we just want to build this with this kind of concentration, that we want to create very good units of creators globally who serve the demand, but there must be demand, and this is something we can't do anything about. If virtual reality don't boom, it means that there is no demand. So I just wish that it booms and all this would happen, but we are anyway going to create video games, so whatever happens, it will be video games then, if not for the B2B and B2 government. So at this facilitation of these gaming communities, that's what we do anyway, you know, we are already planning it, so that will happen no matter what.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Antti, for your time here.
Yeah.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone who attended live today, and look forward to sharing the video later.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
Right.
This was very amazing, you know. Wish to meet you again, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.